Welcome back, everybody. It's the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF. No Wormley on this show. It's mainly because of all the complaints. I mean, that's really what it is. It's definitely not because he's a Ravens fan or because of the timing. But no, we love Worm. He's just not on the show today with us. And on the show today, Fitz and I are going to be discussing our first round, how we have the dynasty ranks for 1QB leagues and also for Superflex. We're in the throes of it. Super Bowl is coming up. We just had the fun Pro Bowl games. The draft is kicking off right now. D-Bro was in Mobile talking to a bunch of the prospects as well. So just a fun week of football. I was out of it last week, Fitzy. I was down for the count, but I'm up off the mat here, ready to talk some football. So, and you're going to go, you just went to Vegas. You're going back to Vegas. Vegas can't get rid of Fitzy.
Yeah, you were ill. I was down a gambling rabbit hole. So I feel like we're both not quite at 100%, but we're going to power through it for the viewers and listeners. But yeah, Boggs, it's the Super Bowl. And right after the Super Bowl, people are going to be jonesing for fantasy football. There's going to be a big void to fill. So that will be startup draft season. And hopefully the show will help our viewers and listeners get ready for their startup dynasty drafts.
Now, let me ask you this. In your opinion, is it better to wait until after the NFL draft, if you're starting up a dynasty league, to do that? Or are you like I think it's a more traditional way, is to do your startup draft and then now you have the rookies in a real rookie draft to do it that way. Is that what you like to do?
I like to do it that way, keep them separated and not have the rookies in the startup draft. And my favorite way to do it, Boggs, is to draft rookie picks. Like you can choose to draft, you go through and maybe at, say 203 of your startup draft, someone decides, okay, I want to draft Ashton Jeanty here. So I'm going to pick rookie draft pick 101. And then at some point, someone's going to come along and figure it's maybe Ted McMillan.
So instead of the names, you're drafting draft spots.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. We did that for the Kings Classic Dynasty draft that I am in. And I think that was like co-organized by Ryan McDowell and Dynasty Rich. I forget what Rich's last name is, but like two of the sharpest dynasty minds in the business, and they decided to set it up that way. And
That's a very interesting way to do it.
It is.
Like that.
It is. And, it's funny because then it's also sort of a non-parallel rookie draft where it's not necessarily the same people picking in the same spot every time. And maybe in some cases, the same person might have 3 or 4 picks in a round, or, some people kind of punt on the rookies and might only have like 1 rookie draft pick. So it is a really interesting way to do it. And it helps you determine your build. If you want to be a, productive struggle person, you're going to be taking a lot of rookie picks. And if you are in win now mode, the heck with the rookie picks, you are taking veterans and sort of punting on the rookie draft.
I mean, I have many rookie picks. You're letting other people draft those, and you're taking the names that you know.
Yep.
So very, very interesting way to do it. Fitz, since we're here and we're talking about startups and everything, I want you, just off the top of your head, I did not prepare you for this question at all, so I apologize. But give me some rules that are important to know going in. It doesn't have to necessarily be a constitution, because a lot of teams do that. They do, your rules, your laws, your however you want to say it for your league. But what are some things that you think kind of fly under the radar but should be pointed out before you jump into the draft? Is it whether it's trading draft picks, how far out, anything that comes to mind that maybe people forget, and now you're in the draft and you're like, well, what about this? And it should have been addressed beforehand.
I think the 2 most important rules probably for any dynasty league are how people want to handle trading and whether they want a deadline or not, and how many injured reserve spots. And with the trading deadline, I know there are staunch advocates on both sides of whether you should have one or not. And the people who advocate for having no trading deadline, it does sometimes create this brinksmanship at the end of the season where the haves are eagerly trying to, it's an arms race for them.
Right.
And that is a good chance for the have-nots, the bottom feeders of the league, to pick up draft picks, pick up young players. Although a lot of times, since people are just trading for these veterans for, I don't know, maybe they're trading for older veterans, the Derrick Henry types, and not willing to give you full price, since really it's only just the remainder of this season plus their career windows, which might be short. But then some people don't like that at all, and they want lineups to be kind of set from early December or mid-December on. And
do you have a preference?
I like to have a trading deadline, but I know a lot of the purists, a lot of the people who host Dynasty
it to be right
shows
before the playoffs.
Same. I want it to be pretty liberal up until like week 13, 14. But then once you get into the playoffs, I don't always love to see people being able to make trades for, a semifinal game.
Yeah, that's weird. I feel like I get it. There are injuries that happen every single week, so that could really put you behind the 8 ball. But, I mean, I would rather have deeper rosters at that point. So if
Agreed.
You're drafting a good roster, or if you have, enough spots on the bench, get them before the playoffs in case something happens. So I'm with you, but I understand it going both ways. What about trade voting and vetoing and stuff like that? That's a big one for me, because I don't want to live in a trade voting world ever.
Same.
I want to have a commissioner I trust, I know is going to make the best decision for the league. And the only thing that trades really should be rejected for, in my opinion, are collusion. That is it. If it's a terrible trade, somebody's willing to do it. Look, the Lakers just got Luka Doncic for, AD and a first-round pick, which is the same package that they traded Kristaps Porzingis away for. So, sometimes teams just make bad decisions.
Yeah, I agree. There should be a best interests clause. Find a commissioner you trust. Give the commissioner unilateral power to reject blatantly unfair trades. And I mean, it has to be obvious collusion. So, hopefully you're in a league where everyone is friendly with each other and there's no concern about that sort of thing. But ideally, you have a commissioner you trust who is not closer to some owners than others and is willing to, weigh the scales of justice evenly.
Right.
In such cases.
And even if they are closer to other people, know that, this person is someone I can trust. So, and they're going to make the best decision for the interest of the league, not the interest of themselves. So, yes, that's, being a commissioner is unforgiving. It's not fun a lot of the time. You have to make some tough decisions, and it's not an enviable position for a lot of people. So, but yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in here. We're going to start with the 1 QB league. So we're not going to talk about any QBs here because you're not taking any in your top 12 to 15. We're going to go 1 through 15. So we're going to give you our top 12, our first round pick in most leagues, and then a couple guys that are just outside that. Before we jump in, let me just tell you about a giveaway that we have going on. And the winner of the signed TJ Hockenson Vikings helmet giveaway is Jordan Poppendiker. We will be contacting you to get that prize, so stay on the lookout. Congratulations on winning that helmet, Jordan. That's a great prize. And this month, if you want a chance to win a signed Aaron Jones Vikings jersey for FREE free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to Fantasy Pros, to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast video, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on this channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize, just like Jordan winning that TJ Hockenson helmet. All right, Fitzy, so let's go through it. I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Give us your 1 through 15. I'll go through my 1 through 15, and then we will discuss.
All right, so I think we're pretty similar at the top, Boggs. In a 1 QB Dynasty startup, I rank the top 15 as Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb is number 3, then Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors. I have those two neck and neck, pretty much. Puka Nacua is number 8, Brock Bowers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins at number 11, Ashton Jeanty at number 12, the rookie, Saquon Barkley 13, Devon Achane 14, and Bucky Irving 15.
For me, I have the exact same 1 through 6 as you. Chase, Jefferson, Lamb 1, 2, 3, Bijan and Gibbs 4, 5. I go Neighbors at 6, then I go Amon-Ra 7, Puka 8, and Brian Thomas 9. Then I'm going with Nico Collins at 10. My 11 through 15, no more wide receivers. We're going Saquon, Achane, Brock Bowers. I have JT at 14, and then I also have Ashton Jeanty at 15. So a little different at 7 is our first initial difference. So sell me on Brian Thomas, because for me, I kind of have a glob of Neighbors, St. Brown, Puka, Brian Thomas, Nico. I think they're interchangeable in there. Maybe I would have Neighbors slightly ahead of the rest of that group. But for me, I think those wide receivers it's kind of pick your poison, choose your favorite out of that group. Are you with that, or is it firmly Brian Thomas for you?
No, it's not firm, Boggs. Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors is kind of a Sophie's choice decision for me. It is, like choosing between your children. And I thought I like Neighbors a lot more coming into 2024, but Brian Thomas Jr. just made a believer out of me. The guy was phenomenal. So that's basically a tie. I have BJT ranked higher simply because I feel better about his quarterback situation. I think Trevor Lawerence is, or at least can be, a league average quarterback. Maybe he can become better than a league average quarterback. The Giants, meanwhile, are basically nowhere at the quarterback position. And to Malik Neighbors' credit, it didn't slow him down that much, and you just imagine that the sky's the limit if the Giants ever had a plus situation at quarterback. And then for me, Amon-Ra is kind of behind those guys. He did have a career high 12 touchdowns in 2024, but here are his per game target averages over the last 3 seasons, Boggs. 9.1, 10.3, and this past year, 8.3, a 3-year low. So Amon-Ra still did have 115 catches this year, thanks to an insane 81.6% catch rate, but his catch rate the previous 2 years was 72.6%. Still very good, and maybe suggests that 81.6% not sustainable. I just worry that Jamison Williams' emergence is going to keep Amon-Ra's target rate slightly lower than it was in 2022 and 2023, and I don't know if the departure of Ben Johnson is going to hurt Amon-Ra's productivity, but it's hard to imagine that it would help.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm not so worried about, the diminishing targets, because I think, the guy's going to get in the end zone. He's going to get 100 catches every single year. Like, the floor is insanely high for Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, both very good talents, definitely in Amon-Ra's range in terms of talent. But I do think the floor is higher for Amon-Ra. He's a safer pick, I would say, just because we've seen him do it for multiple seasons. So maybe a little bit safer. Yes, Ben Johnson is going to hurt. Are they ever going to make a change at quarterback, right? That's kind of, I think not making the Super Bowl 2 years in a row when you're on the doorstep last year, weren't really expected. You get to the NFC title game, and then you lose in an upset this season. I think you're going to start to hear the Jared Goff rumors, but Jared Goff is outstanding. He is a lot better than we give him credit for, anyone really gives him credit for. He's had his team, and he went to the Super Bowl before with the Rams as well. So definitely an underrated quarterback. They shouldn't make a change, but you kind of hear this stuff, right? When these things start to happen. So a little bit of a question there. What makes me mad, Fitz? It makes me mad that you are ahead of me on Brock Bowers. I feel like you and I have fought for this Brock Bowers, stan, ultimate fan, however you want to say it, and you just win. You just beat me. I think you beat me. The only thing I think I beat you in this year was I had him as my number 1 tight end in redraft this year going in. That's the only one I won. But in terms of dynasty and in terms of where to draft him, it has always been you. You had him number 1 in dynasty. I was like, let's see it first. But you were right there, and once again, you trumped me on the Brock Bowers love. So Sell us Brock Bowers as a first-round pick in Dynasty.
We all know how difficult it is to address the tight end position in a satisfying way. And I feel like Brock Bowers definitively addresses the tight end question for people for the next decade. What he was able to do with the quarterback combination of Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as a rookie was just incredible. And, I feel like this might be one of the worst offensive ecosystems he ever plays in. We know the Raiders are going to do something to upgrade the quarterback position, and it might take a while for them to get it right. They're not necessarily going to get it right this year, but there will be an earnest attempt at an upgrade. And, oh, by the way, in comes Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. And I don't know about how Chip Kelly is going to, if he's going to make this offense drastically more efficient, but we do know Chip Kelly plays at a breakneck pace, and the Raiders are going to run more plays this year on offense than they ran in 2024, and that's just
Will
mouthwatering.
Howard to Brock Bowers. It's going to be interesting.
It is just mouthwatering to think of what the play volume might be able to do for Brock Bowers' numbers in 2025 and beyond.
I completely agree. I think we only have a difference of one player, right? And I can't believe this is where I get to brag against you. I have JT in my top 15, and you don't. You have Bucky Irving in over him. I'm sure JT is 16, right? Because Bucky is not that much further down from me either. We will get, I believe our next episode, we're going to be doing top 40s. So you'll hear both their names in that for sure. But I get to be the Jonathan Taylor guy. Is it the injuries? Is that why you're keeping him off? Plus Anthony Richardson? Or is it you're just super excited about Bucky and what he did this season?
It's more being excited about Bucky, Boggs. I actually, I prefer Bucky Irving over Jeanty right now. Wait. No, I do have Jeanty higher. Never mind. Scratch that. But Bucky's performance in 2024 was just very convincing. He looked like a special player to me. I don't think his performance was a fluke. I think this is the real deal. I love Jonathan Taylor, but I feel like I'd be sticking my head in the sand if I didn't acknowledge that Jonathan Taylor's ankle problems have become this recurring thing, maybe a chronic thing. As much as I love him, and it's not about Anthony Richardson, I just have to acknowledge he's starting to get a little older. He's starting to maybe crest on the bell curve of running back performance based on age. So as far as taking him early in the second round of a startup draft, even in one QB, I don't think I can do it. Drake London was probably my toughest omission, not Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, and that is very understandable. I think the reason why and this is, more of a galaxy brain thought, like our boy Andrew Erickson likes to say, the galaxy brain is, I think I'm more willing to take a risk with a guy like Jonathan Taylor, even with the injury prone problems. With this running back class coming in, it's going to be much easier to back him up than it really ever has, right? So I'm a little more willing to take the risk on that enormous upside, because Jonathan Taylor, it would be not shocking to see him be the number one scoring running back in the NFL next year, right? I don't think it would be like, whoa, that's out of nowhere. We've seen him do it before. He's an amazing talent. And obviously when he's healthy, he's putting up enormous numbers. He's getting a ton of carries, which is part of the reason why he is a little bit more injury prone than other guys. And I do think it's going to be better after this draft class to back him up this season. So, just a little, he's going to be in that group, like you said, with Drake London, with Ashton Jeanty, who we'll talk about next year. But, Omarion Hampton's coming in, Scattaboo, Caleb Johnson. We've talked about all these running backs, and it's loaded all the way through. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. There's going to be so many options to back him up. I think I'm more willing to take the risk. If the bottom kind of fell out and there wasn't that type of protection, I think I probably would have Drake London in here ahead. I would have, somebody else in this group. But I still really believe in JT, and his points per game is still extremely high. I believe over 16 points per game in half PPR last season. So still very, very good numbers from him. Did miss 3 games, so he is a tough sell. to some people. So let's go to Ashton Jeanty, and then let's talk about the top here, just so we don't ignore the top end players here. But Ashton Jeanty, I have him at 15. I believe you have him at 12. Is that correct? So we're both very high on this running back coming in. Landing spot is going to make a big difference, of course, but can you get him higher than that on a good landing spot, Fitz, or is this kind of maxing out where his value would be if he lands in, say, Dallas?
I'm sort of projecting this as the Dallas as the landing spot, and that's a solid landing spot. But what's the dream, Boggs? I think it's the Chargers. That is where I would love to see Ashton Jeanty. Just imagine him with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman.
Pittsburgh. Put him with Arthur Smith. They'd have to trade up. So,
although Arthur Smith would probably still give, Jaylen Warren if they re-sign him or whatever backup
Cordero Patterson would still get 5 carries a game.
Yeah, it would be annoying, but Pittsburgh wouldn't be bad. I've heard the Bears mentioned as a possibility. Ben
Johnson's already done the DeAndre Swift thing. I think that experiment's probably close to dead.
Yes. So, it's hard to think of a bad landing spot for Ashton Jeanty. He's just so good. The contact balance is otherworldly, Boggs. And I do not like him as quite as much as a prospect as I like Bijan coming out. But boy, not a big gap between those two as prospects. I do think he is pretty close to being on the Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson levels as a running back prospect.
And speaking of Bijan, let's get to the top here since we skipped it to kind of discuss our differences. It's Chase, it's Jefferson, and Lamb, and I do think it's the wide receivers over the running backs just for the longevity of their careers, correct? So is this the way it has to be ordered, or are you okay if there's a mix of Lamb at the top and then Chase and then Jefferson or something like that? Or is it Chase has to be there? I don't care what you do with the other two. How do you see the top 3 here?
So I think Chase and Jefferson are slam dunks at 1, 2. Okay. I think you can make a case for maybe Bijan Robinson ahead of CD Lamb, but you and I and the Fantasy Pros consensus all have Lamb ahead of Robinson, and I do think there is sort of a sound reasoning to put the wide receiver there. Generally, longer windows of production than you get from the running backs, who have relatively short NFL lifespans. So, I feel like 1 through 5 is pretty open and shut.
I feel like that is the case as well.
Yeah, although I know with the Fantasy Pros consensus, Boggs, we both have it: Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs. The Fantasy Pros consensus differs with us on number 5 for the expert consensus: Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Bijan, and then Malik Neighbors over Gibbs. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's not my favorite, but it's hard to deny, right? Like, Malik Neighbors just got 8 million targets. No Saquon. So Tyrone Tracy had a great year, but he is not Saquon. He's not going to get that type of work. And who's number 2? Right now it's Wan'Dale, right? So they need another target, but targets are not going to be the priority for the Giants in the draft. It should be fixing that O-line and getting a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield and can get the ball to Malik Neighbors. So I think you have your 1-2 studs for the next couple of years in Tyrone Tracy and Malik Neighbors. So that volume is going to stay the same for a while for Neighbors. And if he just gets better, if he improves on his rookie year, it's going to stay for a long time. So I don't hate Neighbors getting the love from the consensus. Just personally not something that I would do. I see the top 3 as more interchangeable than you do, I would say. Because I just love the talent of CeeDee Lamb. Still had a good year, even though he was hurt for a big chunk of the year and playing Gimpy, and Dak missed the back stretch. So I think he still could be number 1, but you cannot deny, with Joe Burrow being healthy and Jamar Chase being there, they just get better every single year. So there's no way I can come off of Chase at 1. But if somebody else were to do it and take Lamb, I wouldn't be like, what are you thinking? I wouldn't pull my hair out or anything. I'd be like, okay, I get it. It's just hard for me to do right now with Chase. So to me, it's more staunch Chase at 1, and then Jefferson and Lamb. If you want to flip those guys, you can. I think the offense is more is slanted more towards the pass in Minnesota. So that's why I have Jefferson at 2 and then Lamb at 3. Plus, Dak is getting old. He's had a lot of injuries. How much longer is this going to last? I mean, Dallas is becoming a butt of a joke. I mean, I saw one today. Jeremiah Trotter went to the Super Bowl, had a kid, named him Junior, and now he's going to the Super Bowl with the Eagles before the Cowboys went back to the NFC title game. So, I mean, they are becoming a bit of a butt of a joke, and a blow-up might be coming in the future here for the Cowboys, especially if anything were to happen with Jerry Jones, if he were to step down because of his age or however it would go. But, I mean, as long as he's alive, I think he's in control of the Cowboys. So I don't think anything is happening there. So I do have Lamb at 3, then Bijan and Gibbs. I don't know. Any question about Gibbs? Because Montgomery's still going to be there. They're getting a new offensive coordinator. So maybe there's a little bit of a downtick. Not for me. I just think the talent is way too good. I think Bijan here, they should rely on Bijan even a little bit more, going to Michael Penix all year next year. And I think Gibbs has earned more playing time than David Montgomery from what we saw at the end of the year here.
I think there's a case to be made that Gibbs is the best running back in the NFL. I really do. Okay. I think he's that talented. And obviously it's a great debate between Saquon, Bijan, Gibbs. And Saquon's situation is hard to argue with, but at the same time, Saquon's older. He's handled over 400 touches this year. There might be longevity issues with him, but, man, he is in the perfect system right now with that great offensive line and his talent. It's just almost unfair. So I totally get why he's here. Buck, should we talk about two of the guys the expert consensus have in the top 15, and we do not?
Yes. Who are the two?
Breece Hall is number 12 in the expert consensus, which shocked me. And number 15, Drake London, we touched on him. He'd probably be my number 16. Was Drake London a near miss for you as well?
Yeah, very high, for sure.
Yeah, and with Michael Penix coming along, and as good as Penix looked as a passer late in the year, and it seemed like he was finally starting to fully unlock Drake London. I totally understand why people are bullish on him. So I have no beef with the expert consensus there. I do have some beef with Breece Hall at number 12.
Do you? Okay. I don't think I have as much, but obviously he's not my top 15, so I would not put him there.
I think I've got him inside my top 20 at 1 QB, but man, there were not many. I think there was maybe one game this year where he had more than 16 carries. The usage was a little troubling. The trajectory of the Jets offense, I don't know what it's going to look like next year. They've got Braylon Allen too, and all of a sudden we had
Isaiah Davis,
and we had did you see Lance Zierlein of NFL.com did a mock draft today? He had the Jets taking Ashton Jeanty.
Really?
Yes.
Why? I don't it would be the most Jets thing to do. But
it would be a Jets thing to do.
I would be furious because I still really like Breece Hall. And the one thing that I'll say, because, again, I don't have him in my top 15. He wouldn't be there for me right now. The offensive line has issues, especially with Fashanu. I don't know what's happening there. What's happening at the quarterback position, right? So there are just too many questions for me to have Breece Hall this high, specifically with the fact that they have Allen and they have Davis, who were both very good backups to Breece Hall when he had these injury problems. The one thing that I'll say is I don't mind people taking 2024 from the Jets, crumpling it up into a ball, and throwing it right into the fire, right? It was a complete disaster of a season. And we've seen Breece Hall be the number one running back in the NFL before. So I understand why he would come in to a first-round pick among a lot of experts. I just can't do it without these questions answered. So I may be higher on Breece Hall. He may go into my top 15 before we get to week 1 here. But right now, there are too many questions. What is happening with Aaron Rodgers? Is Devontae staying? Are we fixing this O-line? Too many questions. So I just can't be there with Breece Hall.
Let me ask you this, Boggs. You do not have Bucky Irving in your top 15. Would you rather have Bucky Irving or Breece Hall?
I would rather have Breece Hall than Bucky.
All right. Yeah.
I just think he's built for it a little more. That's all.
Could be. Yeah, and he certainly does have more ideal prototypical NFL size, but I am concerned that yes, we do want to crumple the 2024 season and throw it in the trash box for the Jets, but quarterback still unsettled, offensive line still unsettled. So we'll see if Breece Hall gets back to the level of production he was at in 2023.
Yeah, and look, it's got to be better, right? Aaron Glenn has to have it better this season for the New York Jets. So it just can't be that bad again, I don't think. So we will see. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's go to Superflex. But before we do, let me tell you guys about Reality Sports Online. And by now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. If you think it sounds complicated, it is not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. If you think you are among the fantasy elite, this is the platform to test your mettle. If you're still not sure, you can test out your general manager skills for FREE free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, so we know the position players will be mixed in, Fitzy, but let's hear your top 15 in a Superflex, and let's see how deep these QBs go.
Why don't you go first, Boggs? Beauty before age on this one, because I think I've got some change ups to throw here after your slightly more conventional top 15.
All right, so I'm starting 5 deep at quarterback. We're going Lamar number 1. I'm going Josh Allen 2. I'm going Jayden at 3. Then Joe Burrow at 4. Jalen Hurts at 5. And then I have that trio of the wide receivers of Chase, Jefferson, Lamb. Then we're going with Mahomes at number 9. Bijan, Gibbs, Malik, Amon-Ra, and then at 14, 15, Bo Nix and Drake Maye for me. So, again, that would be, 7? That would be 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks in my top 15, and the first 5 all being QBs.
All right, so my first 7 players are quarterbacks, and I have 10 quarterbacks in the top 15. I've got Jayden Daniels at the top, Boggs. We can talk about that in a minute, but I have him ahead of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, my 2 and 3. Joe Burrow is 4, Jalen Hurts 5. Drake Maye is number 6 for me. Patrick Mahomes 7. Then Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson checking at 8 and 9. CJ Stroud number 10. Justin Herbert number 11. CeeDee Lamb 12. Bo Nix 13. Then Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs.
So I want to do this just since we do have a difference in the amount of quarterbacks in the first round. I want to give you the consensus for Fantasy Pros. It starts similar with mine. It's Lamar, Allen, Burrow, Daniels, Hurts, top 5, then Chase, then Mahomes at 7, then Jefferson, Lamb, Bijan, Neighbors, then Stroud at 12, who wasn't in either of ours, then Gibbs at 13, Herbert at 14, and Amon-Ra at 15 for the overall ECR. So that would make, 5, 6, 7, 8 QBs in the top 15 for the consensus. So you're a little, actually you do have Stroud and Herbert in there. I just didn't. So let's get the argument. We're not going to talk about the position players here because we already did that. But let's hear about the argument of Daniels up at 1. I don't hate it. It's just not what I would do, but I appreciate it. So let's hear your used car salesman pitch for Jayden Daniels at number 1 overall here, Fitzy.
Yeah, I mean, do we think this Jayden Daniels rookie season was a mirage in any way, Boggs?
I don't, but I didn't think C.J. Stroud was either.
True. Good point. Okay. And we'll get to him soon. But over the last 3 seasons, Lamar Jackson has averaged between 20 and about 25 fantasy points per game, depending on which of those 3 seasons you look at. Josh Allen has averaged between 22 and 24 fantasy points per game in those 3 seasons. If you exclude Jayden Daniels' output in Week 18 of this year when he was benched early in Washington's regular season finale against Dallas, Jayden Daniels averaged 22.5 points per game, pretty much right in line with the 3-year fantasy points per game scoring averages of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Did it as a rookie. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are both 28. Jayden Daniels just turned 24. And, I mean, Daniels posted terrific numbers as a runner, 891 yards, 6 touchdown runs. He also posted really good passing numbers for a rookie quarterback, Boggs. 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 69% completion rate for a rookie, and 7.4 yards per attempt. Also very good for a rookie. He did this with, at best, an average group of pass catchers and an average offensive line, and that might be generous on both counts to call him average. I think things only get better from here.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I raised him. I did not have him this high a couple months ago, right? When we redid this stuff. And now I had to move him up to 3. The finish was incredible. As you mentioned, there's meat on the bone for growth, not only in terms of him, this was his rookie season, but in terms of them adding talent to this roster. They have a lot of money to spend. The only guys on the roster that aren't free agents are McLaurin and McCaffrey. So there's draft picks, there's free agency, there's a lot of ways to improve these pass catchers. And we're going to have Ben Sinnott, who was, behind Zach Ertz, but an extremely talented tight end who made some big plays for them. So I just think that there is a lot to grow. The only reason that I have him at 3 and not at 1, and I understand the years are huge, right? And Daniels, the only downside is kind of what we saw from Stroud, right? He had some injuries. Bobby Slowick wasn't as tricky as he was the year before, which is why he ended up ultimately losing his job. Tank Dell got hurt. Stephon Diggs got hurt. We were expecting a step up from CJ Stroud. We got the regression, right? So there is a precedent for a guy to go into a sophomore slump. The whole reason that sophomore slump, the saying exists, is because we've seen it so many times. The NFL will readjust to you and find out what you're doing and try to take away the good thing. And how are you going to readjust? I don't think there's too many adjustments you can make for a guy like Jayden Daniels, though. He passes the ball well, so if you keep him in the pocket, he'll sling it. And if you don't respect his legs, he will run. So we've seen this from Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think he has to be in that group. He has to be in the top 3. I understand Burrow consensus is higher than him, and I get that. I just think with the fact that Burrow doesn't run as much and his injury history, I can't have him ahead of Jayden Daniels right now. He had an enormous year as well. I really love Burrow. I was higher on everybody else on Burrow coming in to 2024, so I'm not backing off that at all, but I just can't have Daniels behind him. That's all. But for me, Lamar and Allen are just MVPs battling every single year, and adding Derrick Henry really showed us. I mean, Zay Flowers missed some games. Rashad Bateman stepped up. Mark Andrews was terrible, and Lamar still is the MVP here. So Lamar is just absolutely unstoppable. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL. I hate the fact that he's on the Ravens and the Steelers took Terrell Edmonds when they could have had Lamar Jackson. It lives in my nightmares every single day. Fitzy, I hate it. But him and Josh Allen are just a cut above everybody else. So we've seen them repeat it. Just repeatability. I would not be surprised if this show next season going into the 2026 year that I have Jayden Daniels at number 1. I just can't do it right now with the consistency of those top 2 guys. Are you with me in the fact that Burrow just firmly has to be behind that top 3 group?
I think so too. And, I do wonder if maybe Burrow was just, maybe some people haven't sort of readjusted their rankings since the last week or 2 of the season, the fantasy playoffs. I think when maybe some folks do an update, as a lot of people tend to do once the offseason hits, we'll see Daniels kind of slide ahead of Burrow, because as great a season as Burrow had as a passer, doesn't offer much as much as a runner, and he's most likely about to lose T. Higgins.
Yeah, Burrow had an incredible year, should have been a playoff worthy year, should have been MVP caliber year, but Lamar and Josh Allen were just so good. not going to be in there. Let's talk about more quarterbacks, but before we do, let me just remind you guys to join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. You can chat with other fans, get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed right here. And our current schedule right now is Worm and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of each month, and that's tomorrow, right? You guys are doing that tomorrow as we're recording. And then Fitz and I at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of every month. So come and get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, Fitzy, here's the hard sell. I don't think Jayden Daniels is too much of a hard sell. I think that's a pretty neutral sell. Tell us about Drake Maye over Patrick Mahomes. I think that's the big one for you.
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes has not been an elite fantasy scorer now for a couple of seasons. And it's strange to sort of have to reckon with this new gap between real life value and fantasy value for Patrick Mahomes. But I don't know. Does he get back to where he was as a fantasy scorer, or is this kind of where he remains for the next couple of years? Maybe if the Chiefs find themselves some sort of dynamic wide receiver to add to the mix, or the return of Rashee Rice, but then again, Travis Kelce is probably looking at retirement pretty soon. Drake Maye made 12 starts, and it was really more like 11 starts because I think he only played 3 snaps in Week 18. And in those 11 full starts, he averaged 16.8 fantasy points per game. He did it with possibly the worst group of wide receivers in the league. He did it with an offensive line that wasn't very good. Now the Patriots are entering free agency with a treasure chest full of money to spend, and they are picking early in the draft. Things are only going to get better for Drake Maye, and while he isn't as good a runner as Jayden Daniels, May's still going to add a lot of value with his legs. He is an eager and able runner. In those 11 full starts he made, Maye averaged 37.2 rushing yards per game. Man, I think the sky's the limit for this guy, Boggs. I don't know if he ever gets to the level that Allen and Lamar Jackson has achieved. And I
don't think it's impossible.
Yeah. But I do think he can get to sort of a Joe Burrow level of fantasy value. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's too far-fetched at all.
Yeah, and I completely understand the Drake Maye love, and I have Maye above some other quarterbacks that I think would raise some eyebrows to people. I do have Mahomes. I think that, yes, losing Kelce would be enormous. They just don't have a ton of wide receiver talent on this team. I mean, Worthy was huge down the stretch. I think he's going to be a big weapon moving forward for them. Maybe we'll talk about him in the top 40 in terms of what he could possibly do in his NFL career. But they don't have the run game. They can't really go out and spend either. So I just think it's going to be on the back of Patrick Mahomes for a long time here. So I do think he will step up his fantasy game pretty soon here. They're not going to be able to pay all these defensive players either, right? So the defense is going to get worse. They're going to have to rely on Mahomes a little bit more, and we have seen him do it. So still have Mahomes ahead of those guys just because we know at any point they decide to dial up the passing game, and Mahomes is going to have insane value. We saw a little bit of that in Tom Brady's career, honestly, where they would lean on the run game for a while, but then they went out and got a bunch of free agents and then turned up the heat on him passing the ball, and he became one of the better fantasy producers as well. So I think we're kind of seeing that mirror Patrick Mahomes' career here.
It also probably hurts Mahomes in a sneaky way that the Chiefs' defense has gotten so good. Yeah. With Chris Jones being a superstar, and Bolton is fantastic, and then in
McDuffie.
that draft in Vegas where they absolutely loaded up on defense with McDuffie. That was the Karlaftis draft. That was the Leo Chenal draft. Was
Shamari Connor in that draft as well?
It might have been. It might have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's super talented still. So, but I'm with you. I mean, I have Nix and Maye in there, and I couldn't do it with. So the reason I don't have Herbert in there or Stroud, it's not because of the talent of the players, right? I question what this Houston offense is going to look like. I think they jumped the gun by firing Slowick a little bit. I still think he's a good coordinator. He did so well the year before with C.J. Stroud as a rookie. I get it. The offense was the downfall of the team this year, but they had a lot of injuries, specifically in the pass catchers. I mean, Tank Dell's kneecap, Stephon Diggs tore his ACL, and Nico even got banged up. So what do you expect? Mixon was awesome. I think Mixon was very, very good. So they relied on the run game a little bit more. I just question what this offense is going to look like without Slowick, and where are they getting wide receivers, right? Are they, I don't think Cap is great for them. I think it's okay. Are they bringing Diggs back? And Tank Dell is not playing this year. So who is the number 2? Is it going to be Mechie? Is it going to be Hutchinson? Is it going to be a rookie? There are options, but I kind of question what that's going to look like. And Justin Herbert, I mean, it's the reason that you said Ashton Jeanty to the Chargers is the dream landing spot, right? Is that they're going to run the ball a ton. That is what they do. That is what Harbaugh teams do. They run the ball a ton. Yes, you can have Lamar be the MVP, and I think Justin Herbert has that kind of upside. Maybe I'm being a little bit down on him, but I just think they're going to run the ball a ton. He has had an extensive injury history, so I got to put Bo Nix and Drake Maye ahead of those guys for their running factor. And I really think Bo Nix showed it off with his arm. Yes, he threw some picks, but they were in chunks. I think the first 2 weeks he started, he threw 4 of his 12. He had another game with 3, I believe, against the Colts. So that's 7 of his 12 picks were through 3 games. The rest, he's pretty good at protecting the ball. And another guy, just like Drake Maye, that didn't have a ton of assets at wide receiver outside of Cortland Sutton. And Cortland Sutton was, of course, huge, but 29 touchdowns in a rookie season was very impressive from Bo Nix. So I am Nix and Maye ahead of some of those other guys.
Yeah, I don't think there is a huge difference between us and our feelings about Bo Nix. We both have him in the top 15 for Superflex, and the Fantasy Pros expert consensus does not. I guess my worry with him, he kind of hit the ground running in his NFL career, and I don't know if there is a lot of meat left on the bone for him to get significantly better than he is now. Whereas I think, Jayden Daniels, scary as it may seem, I think he could get even better than this. And I think Drake Maye is going to be a lot better than we saw him this year once that supporting cast is improved. But I wonder if Bo Nix, adding some help, more firepower at wide receiver, a legitimate tight end, which they didn't have this year, that would help for sure.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if Nix is close to maxed out on his value. As for the other guys, Boggs, Stroud, I put it all on his offensive line, man. I think his struggles this year were mostly attributable to the shortcomings of the Texans' offensive line, which I believe gave up the highest pressure rate in the league during the regular season. And there were some games where he just could not function with the protection he was getting. Then you throw on top of it the wide receiver injuries. So I think the Texans are going to plow resources into the offensive line this offseason. And really, they only need to upgrade maybe 2 of those spots, plus a depth piece or something. And man, we saw him turn it on again in the playoffs. So I'm still pretty bullish on CJ Stroud. And, I regained confidence in Justin Herbert this season. I think I'd been lower than consensus on him in Dynasty for quite a while, but averaged a career best 7.7 yards per pass attempt this year, only threw 3 interceptions in 504 pass attempts. And I know they're going to be run heavy with Greg Roman.
Really good until the playoffs.
But credit Greg Roman, he rediscovered the forward pass this year. They were not, I think they were only maybe the 7th run heaviest team in the league this year, which was a surprise. I figured they'd be among the 3 run heaviest. We know Herbert's going to add some rushing value. He's still only 26 years old. Yes, he has been banged up, but he is a tough son of a gun, Boggs. That guy, remember when a couple of years ago when he had that Thursday night game against the Chiefs where he had the rib cartilage injury and was gutting it out and almost pulled out an upset win over the Chiefs that night. So he's a dog, man. And there aren't many quarterbacks in the league who can spin it like Justin Herbert.
Yeah, you're absolutely. I mean, in terms of talent, I would just love to see him in a different offense, right? But you're right. And listen, Ladd McConkey will make you rediscover the forward pass, right? That dude was an absolute stud this year, but they need to add a lot of talent for him to throw the ball more as well. They just don't have a lot there. It's Ladd and nobody in LA. So I'm still high on Justin Herbert in terms of his skill. It's just the offensive system and the talent around him are not my favorite. That's all.
The Chargers have money.
Are we missing anybody here?
I was just going to say, Boggs, the Chargers have money to spend in free agency. I would almost guarantee.
There's not a lot of free agents, though.
Yeah, but like Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, they just need another.
Keenan Allen, maybe back.
Yeah, but do they want a slot guy? That's the only thing. I don't see them chasing Allen or
Probably
Diggs.
Not. I mean, I'm just thinking of names. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are going to find a credible outside receiver because I don't think they can count on Quentin Johnston being the answer at one of those outside receiver spots.
I'm with you. So the third tier in the rankings on FP, I don't think we need to talk about Jalen Hurts. I think he's firmly behind the Burrow group and Jayden Daniels. But, Jordan Love, Caleb, now he has Ben Johnson. That's interesting. Baker is down here. Goff is down here. We're probably a little bit low on Richardson after his horrible year and Trevor Lawerence after some bad years. Are you really concerned about these guys, or are these guys just kind of right outside this group for you?
My nearest misses at quarterback, Boggs, and I would say these guys are probably two of them would be in my top 20 for sure. So would be in the next 5, Caleb Williams and Jordan Love, probably in that order. I think I trust Ben Johnson to get it right with Caleb, and I know some people think it's maybe not the ideal marriage between quarterback and offensive play caller with the way, at least based on the way Ben Johnson called games when he was in Detroit. But I still think it's going to be better. It was kind of a rough rookie year for Caleb, but there were also moments, Boggs. I mean, that 6-3 game against Seattle on a Thursday night was one of the ugliest games we've seen in a long time. But there was a throw that Caleb made in that game where he was on a dead run and just hit Rome Odunze with an absolute dart on a dead run in the end zone. And, of course, the touchdown was called back on a holding penalty. But, man, that throw got me off my couch, Boggs. It was so good.
Yeah.
Like, there are only a handful of dudes in the league who can make that sort of throw.
And we mentioned it before, Rome Odunze going to be one of the best buys of this offseason by a wide margin. Like, I am going to try to trade for Rome Odunze and probably Caleb Williams everywhere I possibly can. So I'm absolutely there with you. I also think, just getting Liam Cohen in Jacksonville could be enormous for Trevor Lawerence, right? I still think the skill set is insane. They have not let him run ever. Why not? You're letting Lamar run. Jayden Daniels is running. Bo Nix and Drake Maye both ran in their rookie seasons. Let this dude use his wheels. I'm excited about what could potentially be there. And if Anthony Richardson can figure out how to throw the ball downfield, he's got talent at the wide receiver position, and the legs are insane. So there's still a lot of meat on the bone with a lot of these QBs here, Fitzy.
Yeah, hold on, Boggs. Let me throw one more name into the mix, and I'll rank these guys for me, please. Trevor Lawerence, Anthony Richardson, Michael Penix Jr.
I would have him in that order. And I would have him in that order because I don't think Penix is going to be a runner. So I would have Penix firmly third, but the talent in Atlanta is insane. You have Bijan to throw 2 out of the backfield. Drake London, who we mentioned. Kyle Pitts came alive finally. Darnell Mooney had an insane year. Ray McLeod was even good as a third wide receiver. There's a ton of talent in Atlanta for Michael Penix to make this work.
And I wouldn't even be surprised if they added another wide receiver in the draft, Boggs. Penix, man, does that guy have arm talent. I mean, That guy is just...
I watched it against the Longhorns. He was dropping it in the bucket for Washington over some really good corners in Texas as well. So
yeah, we know he's not going to run, but I do think he's a guy who could, at his peak, throw for somewhere from 4,000 to 4,400 yards a year with like 30 touchdowns.
Burrow doesn't run. Burrow doesn't run,
Right.
And he's way up there.
I do think Penix potentially has like Joe Burrow type upside. I think he's that good a passer.
Yeah, he could be. I mean, we have probably 2 starters pretty quickly coming into the league in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as well. So quarterback looking at least better, still questionable near the near that mid-tier range, but there's a lot of upside here with some of these guys. But that is going to do it for us, unless there's anyone else we missed. Is there anyone we missed, Fitzy, that you wanted to discuss before we get out of here?
I don't think so, Boggs. I think we covered it pretty well. And yes, this rookie quarterback class that just came into the league in 2024 restocked the cupboards very nicely. So it made things a little bit easier for us doing Superflex startup drafts in 2025.
All right, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for us here, talking about the first round of your Dynasty drafts. We'll be back to do a 2-round, 3-round mock here later this week. 2-round mock. We'll make it easy with myself and Fitzy, and Worm will be back for that. He's back. We love him. Of course, he'll be back. So check that out. But remember, you can follow us on the Twitter at Bogman Sports for myself, at Fitz_FF for Fitzy. And we will see you guys then. Take it easy, everybody.